Great, Laura. How are you?
I'm okay, consider the world that we have right now. So hopefully it will not be disturbed. And happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And we said we're going to talk about authentic leadership. And Kathy, I wanted to start with that. So I have few clients who actually are debating between continuing their senior kind of individual contributors, senior ICs, and they are debating about management. They both have management opportunities, and one of the things that came up, it's not the only one, but one of them was, can I still stay authentic? Can I still stay me as a manager? Or do I actually have to change how I show up? And I would love to hear your take on that. What would you say to those women?
Do not change who you are. And in fact, I think it's more leaning into who you are and really knowing yourself first. Right? I think we live in a society where we feel there's a mold of what a good manager looks like, and there isn't really. It's a lot of what society has said for a long time,
Yeah,
but the best leaders are not those that are extroverted, that are charismatic, right, that stand up there and make it known. The best leaders are the ones that are able to deliver results through people, right? The ones that care about their people and get them engaged. So that
yeah,
means being authentic to who you are.
definitely. And I think that when you are authentic to who you are, you bring the best of yourself.
Absolutely. And it's easier, right?
Yes.
Because I think if you're trying to be someone else, you have to then remember, oh, which persona am I today? And, we should be the same person we are at home as we are at work. And it's scary at times, but it is where the best leads you. If you ask any leader that you know is fantastic, they will tell you that they're being themselves.
Yeah. I talk a lot about that because I'm very introverted and relatively shy and close person. So I think one of the challenges is that, as you said, like we have this persona in mind that the leader has to be some personality, right? And we think, oh, we have to change. I'm introverted, I'm quiet, so I have to be extroverted, I have to be loud. Instead of looking at how my qualities, how my authentic self, being me, is actually an advantage.
Absolutely. Because as an introvert, I'm assuming you're much better at listening,
Yeah.
right? Analyzing, thinking about everybody else in, who's engaged to really understand how can I show up best for everyone. And that's different from extroverts, right? Extroverts
Yeah.
tend to be, look at me, come follow me. Right? And that can be inspiring and it can be motivating, and it's not bad. Neither one is bad. It's just different. And I have a saying that introverts don't lack confidence. They just have a different energy. Right? I assume you
Yeah.
get your energy by spending time alone,
Yes.
right? I get my energy by I'm an extrovert, so we'll just put that on the table.
Yeah.
But I get it from being with people. I have to adapt as well to other people so that I make sure other people's voices are heard. And vice versa. You would have to adapt to make sure other people's voices, maybe even tamp down so the introverts can be heard and
Yeah, for sure.
and engage.
Yeah. Yeah. So I always encourage my clients to try to look at it differently of how their current qualities that they utilize as ICs, as individual contributors, are actually their strength and how they can hone in to who they are and use that as their advantage as a leader.
Absolutely. Because we all have our strengths.
Yeah.
And but it all starts with awareness, right? To understand that and do the work of where are your strengths? Where do you prefer to be? Now, let me ask you, I assume when you're working with your clients as well, but we all have to stretch,
Yes.
right? So it's not like we can say, oh, I get a pass. I don't have to go to that town hall because I'm not an extrovert, right? We still have to show up. We just need to know how to manage ourselves and make sure that we're showing up the best way we can, and then find the way to energize ourselves. So, if you're going to a sales conference, I've had this example a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
and it's exhausting for someone that's more introverted. Well, don't plan potentially to go to dinner that night. Go to all the sessions, do everything you need to do, but then make sure you plan time to get your energy back. Make sure you've getting your sleep or whatever you need to succeed is what's important to focus on.
Absolutely. And you touched, Kathy, you touched on a point that really, hit home for me, because conferences are one thing that I feel very uncomfortable with. And when I was relatively young, both in age and in my career, and I went to conferences, I kept beating myself up for, oh, why am I so stressed about it? Why am I not just blending in like everyone else, instead of just, you know, acknowledging that that's who I am, and it's a little bit overwhelming. And as I said, maybe I need some quiet time, and just be more tuned to who I am. And I do challenge also myself. You talked about challenging, still, like, yes, lead by who you are, but you still need to challenge yourself. So I challenge myself in going to conferences, and not just that, but talking in conferences. So I have several talks coming up, and I do also challenge my clients, right? We all need, on one hand, to challenge, to expand, but also to stay who we are.
Absolutely, 100%.
And you talk about, I wanted to ask you, you talk about balancing results with humanity. And a lot of times, and this is another thing that my clients raise, like, how can I still, I have great relationship with people I work with, and now I'm going to become a manager, so I'm going to be this bad person, I guess, right? It tells people what to do, what not to do. So how, and we all know we don't have to be one or the other, but kind of how would you say to those who maybe this is something that on their mind, how do you balance that results with humanity?
I think we need to remember that it's the job of the team is to deliver the results, right? And we need to look at it from that angle. Now, the job of the manager and the leader is to help facilitate and make that happen, right? So oftentimes you get promoted because you're really good at doing the job, right? But it is a different job. And so now when you step into that management role, you have to think about, well, what are the outcomes? As a team, what do we have to do? And it's then about breaking it down because each person on the team has to do something to help drive the results. And that's where the humanity side of it comes in, because what you need and what I need are two very different things, but you need both of us to show up um, highly engaged, right? Excited, knowing what our job is, knowing what we need to do, what our responsibilities are. So that's where the people side of it comes in. Because yes, you could come in and tell everyone exactly what to do, but they're going to do only what you tell them to do. And our job as managers is really to get people to look at the end result and think, oh, wait a minute, I know Limor told me I need to do this, but if I do X, Y, and Z, I'm actually going to get us to our goal faster. And therefore, I trust that she's going to be happy with what I put forward. So you're really looking for ways to get people to think beyond
Yeah.
this just the task at hand. And that's the challenge you run into a lot of times. If you're just being results only at all costs, you miss bringing the people along that are going to be more engaged, more productive, more innovative, right? They're going to trust your customers better. There's this whole virtuous cycle you create when you come from a people first mindset to deliver on the results.
Spot on. And I think, people need to first understand the why, right? I mean, why we're doing certain things. This is super, super important to be clear on why. Why are you asking me to do this? Right? I mean, so people can connect and being human, as you said. One of the challenges, I'm curious to hear your. It's not exactly about authenticity, but I have a client that their company is forcing return to work, so return to office. So they have this policy of how many days a week to work in an office. And this is really difficult for managers, right? Because a lot of times, especially since COVID, that everyone got used to work from home, a lot of times it doesn't really matter if you work from home or from the office. Sometimes it does, sometimes. And how are you as a leader, on one hand, you have to push your team to be in the office because that's the policy. On the other hand, you understand that they have life.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on that?
I have a lot of takes on that one, Limor.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I went through this a couple of times. We went through this before COVID, believe it or not. At HP, Meg Whitman sent everyone home. They were closing down offices, said you needed to get, let's reduce the costs. We trust you. You can work from home. And then
Yeah.
she did a 360 and said, actually, sorry, I need everyone to come back in.
Oh.
And it was interesting. So I've managed through this for a
Yeah.
long time. And I mean, sometimes there were carrots, like, come in, we're going to have lunch. There's the sticks if you don't come in, if you're not in the office.
Yeah.
I mean, they were tracking who came in when, there were notes on the desk. So I get it. And then we went through it again with COVID, right? You really, as a team, I think the most important thing as a manager is to understand as best you can of the why for the company. One company that I had worked with, and I was the chief people officer, and a lot of this, isn't always shared, but there was a cost implication to the business. By not coming back in, there were certain benefits that were being lost.
Mm.
Tax benefits, other incentives, etc. So, there's more to it than just someone wants you to come back into the office.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to understand as a manager, when you have to be the one enforcing it, the best you can understand is the why. Is there something else beyond we just want everyone back in? And sometimes there is. Sometimes it is a leader feels that's where more innovation happens. They've seen that leader may not be good at working at home, so they want it to be back in the
Yeah.
office.
So they want everyone to come to the office and work with them.
That absolutely is one of the reasons. And I think it's so important. It's like any change is understanding as much of the why from the company, understanding your why, and then understanding how you can translate that into individuals.
Yeah.
Right? So if you can, what's important for someone who's family oriented, right? So I want to spend time with my family. I'm more productive when I am at home because that hour commute, is time that I'm working. But now I lose that. You're losing productivity. I'm losing time with my family, blah, blah, blah. But what would be beneficial, right? So that individual might actually need downtime. And so if you can translate, now the commute will give you time away to think, and try to put that commute time into a strategic mindset of, yeah, I know it's hard. I get it. But can you reframe it to say that time is you can read a book? You'll be more balanced, or you get to think about this rather than doing, right? So trying to work with each individual to see how you might be able to reframe it to connect with their, I call it with them, what's in it for me,
Yeah, yeah.
because it's different.
Although it's sometimes difficult, yeah. I'm with you on that. But I used to commute quite a lot and listened to a lot of books and podcasts. Definitely, there's a benefit to that. But on the other hand, it's exhausting and time consuming. So it's difficult. But I think, as you said, like at least explaining the why you're doing it, if there are tax benefits or whatever. I mean, or maybe you build new offices that you have to justify the cost, right? I mean, you have to
Exactly.
occupy them, whatever that may be. I think that helps at least, even if people don't like it, that at least help them understand why you're doing that. Why are you asking them to do it?
Well, and it's also, it's typically the more mature folks that say, hey, I'm just as productive as home. I've
Yeah,
already have the relationships. I know what I need to do. But think about new people coming into a business. And I
yeah,
think back to the days that I was in an office. How much do you learn by listening to someone else's conversation? You go, oh, that didn't go well. I'm going to avoid doing that. And
yeah,
there is stuff that's lost when you're not in an office.
yeah,
And
definitely.
I think it is going to be for the younger generation because a lot of them went to school remote. They need to build the relationships. They don't know how to work, with the same level of focus. There's a lot of different things. And I don't think there's one sweeping answer to it. And that is what leadership is about, right? And management is thinking about every individual. This is why we say it's a human first mindset of what does it mean for
Definitely.
each person.
Yeah. And show us a little bit your upcoming book and your E3 framework. What is it about?
Yeah, so there was a number um, that really kind of, there's two numbers that really hit home for me when I was doing some research. One is only 21% of people are highly engaged in their job. That means there's a ton of productivity not
Yeah.
happening from a business perspective. The other statistic was, and it ranges, but I like to go with 70% around fail to accomplish their goals. So that means only 30% of people or less are successful in delivering results.
Mm.
And we know that's what we're supposed to do. We need to deliver results as an individual,
Yeah.
as a team, as an organization. So I really stopped to think about this and say, okay, why? Why is there such a small percentage that can't, what's the friction between strategy and execution? And as I thought about it, researched it, talked to a lot of leaders, there's really a formula for success. And it's the E3 leadership code. So I've codified it into this is the structure that works. And the successful leaders are doing it whether they articulate it this way or not. So, first, they express the end vision. So they're able to say, where are we going? Why are we going there? What's the purpose? Right? You're painting the end vision. You're not telling people how to get there. You're just saying, this is where we need to get to. So it provides inspiration, it provides motivation, it gives people flexibility, right? This is strategy, this is where we're going. The second E is engagement. And we've been talking a lot about this. Each one of
Yeah.
us is so different, but you need people to buy in. If you have this great idea and you're going to return to the office, how do you get everyone bought into this? And so now the engagement requires you to engage everyone the way they want to be engaged. Not how you engage, but how they want to be engaged. The third E is execute. And we need to execute. We have to hold people accountable. We have to have structure. We have to have rhythm. We have to make difficult decisions. And we need to continue to follow up, right? And resolve conflicts, all of that. So those are the three E's. And I like to think of it as a stool with three legs.
Mm-hmm.
What keeps those legs together then is emotional qualities. It's the emotional intelligence, it's the authenticity, right? Because that's the humanity. Because you need to connect to the hearts of your people. Because this is how you're going to make sure you have that strategy, people are on board, and you're executing and delivering results. So the E3 leadership code is the human approach to high performance.
Wonderful. Yeah. And by the way, a question about the vision. So I've seen that in companies I worked at, it was not as easy, right, to get to a unified vision. And especially nowadays, because things are changing so rapidly and with technology, especially I come from the tech space, you too, like with AI and everything, it's so difficult. There's so much things that change. How do you how do you even go about it? Like when there's so many uncertainties as a leader, what do you do when you're not exactly sure what will happen? What's your take on that?
It's asking the question over and over again, right? It's not something that you say the strategy is at the beginning of the year. It is something that should be revisited, quarterly, monthly, weekly. What I do personally, I have my year's goals set up, right? These, and they're in buckets of these are the four things I want to accomplish, and that's success at the end of the year. And okay, this quarter I'm going to do these things to drive that forward. Well, the start of every week, Sunday night or Monday morning, I sit down and go back to those four buckets. Are they still true? And then what do I need to do this week to move things forward? And it's the same thing with a company because you're right, it is changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
You have to keep coming back to, is it still valid? Do we have to change something? And have we communicated? So the big difference at an organizational level or a team level is now the communication. So where people get frustrated is, okay, we said this is the strategy and people feel, oh, we just pivoted. Well, a lot of times they haven't shared why. They haven't
Yeah.
given enough time to it. They haven't communicated whatever it is. It's okay that we're going to adjust, but we need to communicate it then.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is lack of context. I mean, kind of what I get, because a lot of times leadership make decisions and they don't share the context around it. So people just see the end result. They hear, okay, we pivoted, for example, right? But they don't understand why it happened. They don't understand the circumstances for that, the reasoning. And then they get frustrated and say, oh, those leaders, they don't know what they're doing. And providing the context is super, super relevant. And you know what I used to do? I used to be very transparent with my teams when setting the vision about this is what I know now.
Yep.
Doesn't mean that it's the end all be all. Things can change and will change. So
Yes.
we are making certain assumptions and we are making plans based on that.
Yeah. And
But
I think
things can change.
it's definitely the context. And I think this is also where it's important not to have it so specific of how you're going to get there and more
Yeah.
of what success looks like when we are there, right? So when we talk about expressive vision, what I'm asking folks to think about is what does success look like? What are you celebrating at the end of the year? What does it look like? What's being done differently? How are you going to feel when you've done it? And suddenly that feels less of a pivot because if it is, we want to service our clients that they're going to be autonomous in some tech that we're providing, right? Well, that could be we're going to focus more on sales, or it might be that we're going to focus more on a new product, or if it's all about we're trying to automate and make our customers' lives easier, then that gives you a little more flexibility to rethink. All right, that didn't work. We tested that. That doesn't work. That's not making their life easier. Right. And
Yeah.
that's where I think leaders need to rethink what they're saying on vision because we have to pivot in this day and age because that is the only constant now is change.
Change is the only constant, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And out of the three E's, so you mentioned envision and engagement and execution, what do you see leaders struggle with the most?
If I have from experience, execution is the one that most people struggle with because coming up with and again, each person might be different, right? You get some
Yeah.
people that are fabulous at execution. They're operators. They give me a plan, I'm going to go execute against it, but they miss the vision and the, expressing the end vision and the engagement. But I think most people get bored by the time it comes to execution, because it's easier to say, here's our strategy. It's easier to be friendly with folks, but it's hard to do the right things at the right times over and over again. And that's what execution is about, and that's how you get results, right? It's We get bored very easily as a society, and so you need that structure to come back to and say, okay, we said this was our vision. We talked about the alignment, right? We said this is what we're going to do. We got to come back. Is it still the vision? Are
Yeah.
we making progress? If we're not making progress, what do we have to change? So I think that's where most people just get frustrated, and oh, the strategy isn't working. We need to change the strategy, and it feels good to change it.
I think what you said, I mean, I think that we have the attention span is getting shorter, and we want immediate gratification.
Yeah.
And we all know that success is achieved by small steps over a long period of time.
Yes. And you
And we
need to
have to
just keep
fight
marching.
that. Yeah, we have to keep marching.
Yes, absolutely. And you need to make sure everyone's marching in the right path where we want to be going, you know, respecting where there's fear, ego, uncertainty, and doubt, addressing it, understanding what's stopping people from giving their all. Right? This is
Yeah,
why I say it is absolutely performance is based on your people.
for sure. And how do you balance between, we talked about emotional intelligence, what being human,
Mm-hmm.
to being assertive, like, right? Because you have to balance those two. On one hand, you want to be human. We gave the example of coming to the office, right? You want to be human, you want to understand the people, the challenges they face, but on the other hand, you have the job to be done. You need to
Mm-hmm.
execute or whatever that may be. How do you balance that? What's the thing that you work with your clients on?
You still need to be direct, and you still need to be performance in mind of what success looks like. Um, Being empathetic and being kind doesn't mean you don't address the challenges. And I think it's important to recognize that you're actually being less kind if you don't have the difficult conversations and you don't provide strong feedback and you don't hold people accountable. Because
Yeah,
there's nothing worse than at some point you're going to give a performance review. And if you give a performance review and suddenly you're forced to say doesn't meet expectations, well, that's failure on your part as a manager 12 months earlier or even a month or whatever it is. You need to express the end result. What does good look like? And then you need to engage them and then you need to execute. And if they're not executing, you can care deeply and still be direct. And I think Kim Scott's book of Radical Candor is one of
exactly
my
what I thought about.
favorites, right?
Yes.
And, you know, my tagline is I'm a nurturing driver. That's how I introduce myself to anybody on my team. I'm a driver, I'm an extrovert. I like control, right? I know me. This is who I am. Doesn't mean it's right, because a lot of my team sometimes can be like, oh, here she goes again. But I spend a lot of time with my team helping them understand I really care. And I am going to give you, some strong feedback, but it's because I want you to succeed. And you're
Yeah.
not going to succeed without this feedback. And I'm going to push you. But that means you're going to go that much further along in your career. So it's because I care that I'm giving you this feedback.
Yeah, definitely radical candor. For those who listen to us, go and get that book. I mean, it's an incredible book. Highly recommended. What are the traits you see in women leaders? So we talked about leadership in general. What are some challenges that women leaders struggle with the most, based on the work you're doing?
I think a lot of women struggle with thinking they have to show up with the male, or the not the male, the masculine energy. You know, they
Mm.
have to model that extrovert, charisma, strong, doing mindset. Um, and some people are very, that's my natural trait, but that doesn't mean that's true to who I am. And I think women do bring a lot of feminine energy. And by the way, a lot of men bring some really strong feminine energy into the workplace too.
Yeah.
It's about balance and being confident to know that that feminine energy is powerful. It does drive results, and it's okay. Because I've seen a lot of women that actually then go the opposite way. They don't support other women, right? They're
Yeah.
trying so hard to um, act or fit a mold. Um, but it's really about finding your true voice and owning it, sharing it, and not apologizing for it.
Yeah, I've seen that too, unfortunately, that women actually not supporting each other. I mean, actually, I had at least one female manager, if not even two, that were actually not very supportive compared to other men managers that I had. That's kind of very interesting, and I think this is stemmed from at least partly because they were trying to be masculine, right? They were trying to be, oh, I need to be this assertive, strong leader, and they try to kind of be someone they're not.
Yeah. And it makes it harder. People can see through it, right? At
Yeah,
the end of the day. But I get it. I mean, listen, as women, it has been tough. You know, I was the only girl on a boys soccer team. I refused to not play. You know, went into, I was an accountant for a while, and then, in tech. I mean,
yeah,
that's the world that I played in. And I refused to give up. But I really learned how much it is about balance.
yeah,
And funny enough, my dad, who's a huge influence in my life, had a tremendous amount of feminine energy that he brought into the workplace. And he worked his way from the mailroom up to being president of an international um, refrigeration company. And he was all about his people, dignity and respect. He's like, Kath, just treat everyone with dignity and respect. If I had to go do a layoff that I was opposed to this one time, and I'll never forget. He's like, listen, just go in there, because if you don't do it, someone else will. But you can go in there and treat them with dignity and respect.
yeah,
And that's what people remember of my dad, of being this amazing leader. It's because he cared about people. And so it's okay to care, and in fact, you have to as a leader.
yeah. You have to care, but as you said, like it's a balance. Challenge directly. We'll kind of end with that with Kim Scott. Challenge directly, care personally, which I really love. And tell us, Katie, before we end today, about your upcoming book and where can, obviously on LinkedIn, people can find you, but kind of,
Yeah, so the book's coming up. If you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll be able to learn more about it. It's coming out this spring. And it's really a book around leadership to help people recognize that it's not an either or choice. It's not performance or people, it's both. Um, and I wrote this book really to help people learn how to do some of these things. We often talk about you should express and envision and have purpose. You should engage your people. That's great. So there is a bit of the what and the why, but more importantly, how. So you say,
yeah,
I should engage people. How do I engage them? How do I execute? How do I really bring my emotional qualities to bear in the workplace?
fantastic. Thank you so
Great.
much. It was fun.
Thank you, Limor. Thanks so much for having me on. This was great.